And we are back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. 𝗪𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧, and I will be your host. And today is Women and Wellness Wednesday, and we have a special guest. I'm giving her a little bit of an introduction because I let everybody else introduce themselves, but it is Janelle King, and she is our representative for the Georgia State Board of Elections. So let me bring her up on stage. Hey, Janelle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I can hear you great. So I did give you a little bit of an introduction, but if you would like to just introduce yourself a little bit more, just to tell our audience a little bit more about you and what you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy having these one-on-one conversations and, just being able to kind of really stretch out the thought and give people background. But I am Janelle King. I am someone who's been in Georgia politics for a very, very long time. It's my entire career from being a little girl, as what I say, because I started as an intern and kind of worked my way up. As a result, I made a lot of relationships. I built up a lot of good political capital. I learned a lot. I was the deputy state director of the Georgia Republican Party. I've served on other state boards, but the board that is getting all the attention right now is the State Elections Board. And, that has a lot to do with the fact that, when I joined the board kind of shifted a bit. I had no idea that would be the case. I went there with clear eyes. I went there with the idea and understanding that I would do the best I can to just deliver results. And as a result, we kind of created a little bit of a majority of the 5-person board and really making some strides. And so, it's getting a lot of attention. But while there are some critics, I definitely hope that people see that we're an agency that's getting work done. So so that's a little bit about me. I love politics. I'm married to Kelvin King, who's running for Secretary of State right now. I have a son and a grandbaby and a daughter-in-law that I absolutely adore. And so life is good.
Very, very cool. And what I wanted to ask, if you wouldn't mind explaining to the audience the difference between the State Board of Elections and the County Board of Elections, because I think when people say Board of Elections, they just think it's all one conglomerate, and it's not. You guys have two different functions.
Absolutely. So the best way to describe it is based on who reports to who, right? So the county election boards report to the Secretary of State. They are responsible for administering elections in every single county. So they're the ones that put on the actual event of you going in and voting. Where the state election board, we serve as a checks and balance over the entire election process. So we examine complaints, issues, questions of voter fraud or irregularity. All that stuff comes to us for review, and then we determine whether or not there should be or what the appropriate response should be. But I like to say that the SEB kind of provides oversight over the entire election process over the Secretary of State's office. And then the Secretary of State's office is responsible for the counties, and the counties are responsible for the actual event of elections.
Yes. And again, Georgia has been under the spotlight in some good ways and in some controversial ways, right? Because we had the FBI that came and they requested documents. So Fulton County has really been in the hot seat. And I know that there were talks of an investigator. I know there's certain things that you can't say because, it's ongoing. Right. But I didn't know if you would be able to speak to a little bit of that. And also, just to, what was my other question? I had one other question for you and it escaped me. And it was pretty much just a procedurally, that's what it was. I know that there are also mentions, and it's not solidified, that the state board was considering taking over Fulton County's elections. So if you wouldn't mind talking to those 2 points.
Yeah, so let's start with Fulton County as a whole. This county has had several issues when it comes to their elections over the years. It spans way past 2020. We're talking decades. And so it's not uncommon to see Fulton County a bit on the hot seat when it comes to our elections. However, what makes it unique right now is that when 2020 occurred, there was a lot of questions around it, right? I mean, you have the stopping of the counting and then the pulling of things underneath tables, and whether or not all of that was something that should be of concern, it caused concern. And so I always like to be clear on where this fight is, or what the nucleus of the battle is when it comes to Fulton County. The nucleus of it is not that people are, well, there are some people that feel 100% certain that Fulton County had some malfeasance in their election. However, there are a large group of people who are unsure. And so the nucleus of this is that once the election has occurred, there are a lot of documents that become public record. And this is so that as citizens, we can do our duty and ensure that we are vetting our own election process, making sure that it's being handled appropriately. And so when those documents became public, there's an open records request that can be made to request those documents. And there were several people who did. These are ballot images and things of that nature. This does not have any of your personal data on it because we don't know who cast the ballot. So this is public records. So when people ask for them, they have been getting obstruction, pushback, no's, over and over again. So we're talking about 5 years of documents not being seen. And instead of showing us, or like my husband says, showing your work, instead of that, you're telling us that we should trust you. You're telling us everything is fine. There's nothing to see here, but you're not proving it to us. And so that is what the nucleus of this argument is that we are not here as citizens to take your word for it. That's not how a republic works. We are here to hold you accountable and to ensure that what you're saying, you have the evidence to back it up. So Fulton County, we saw over the last four or so years, the past right after 2020, they were telling us everything went fine. There were no issues in the election. There was nothing to be worried about. Well, we're now seeing through cases that are coming before the state election board, cases that have been withheld from the state election board for a number of years, might I add, that was not the case, that there were tabulation problems. And what does tabulation mean? That's how you determine the outcome. When you hear the word tabulation, think tally. So this is how you tally the votes to determine who won. And so when the state law says that the report that is read, the machine spits out a receipt, which is called a tabulator tape, that proves this many people voted. This is the number of people who cast the ballot for this person, for that person. This is the totals. When that comes out, it comes out with signature lines because there's supposed to be an election worker and 2 witnesses that signs that tabulator tape. Well, we found out that of 37 requested tabulator tapes, 36 were not signed. They were the ballots were tabulated on different machines when it's not supposed to be removed. Memory cards coming out of the machines, that's not supposed to happen. And then you have a series of tabulator tapes that they can't even find, 10 to be exact, from what Fulton County has admitted to, which consists of 20,000 votes. So there's 20,000 votes that were tabulated, were counted, but we don't have any proof of how they were counted. So all of that, and when you throw all of that into the pot, the word that comes to mind is chain of custody. Yes. Chain of custody means that you can prove that there was no interference in the election process in this portion of the process. Well, we can't prove that when it comes to Fulton County. So yes, people are upset. Yes, people are asking questions. No, people are not election deniers. Matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. We are absolutely pro-elections because we want it to be done correctly. So that's the thing with Fulton County, and that's why we did have to move forward. Now, the private investigator has nothing to do with the Fulton County piece. Okay. Everything to do with particular cases that we have. And right now, we, as a state election board, we've hired 2 investigators. However, they have not been given the proper resources and tools in order to fully investigate cases. So as of right now, the Secretary of State's office is still investigating cases. And at some point I can share why that is, but our private investigators, because we have a couple of cases that we would like to have full autonomy over as they investigate them.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, because see, there's a lot of chatter about this, right? And there's been a lot of chatter about it for years. And I think you just giving a consolidated statement and saying, okay, this is kind of the advent of it, and this is how we got here, really helps a lot of people, because, you know, this may be going on in other counties and states, but because there's not really a highlight on those areas, you know, people really aren't talking about it. So I'm glad this is being highlighted, because, you know, nobody really thinks about the chain of custody and how important it is when you're talking about voting, especially when you're using electronic machines that spit out a paper that has a QR code on it. That is very concerning to me. I am a paralegal. And, you know, there could be anything in that QR code, and it could distort the vote. What if the QR code is a completely opposite to how I viewed it? I don't know.
Well, that happened. So, you know, it's interesting you brought up the QR codes, because I think that that's something else that gets misconstrued. And you have to understand that there's a majority of people who are okay with a little bit of fraud in the elections. They're okay with using a machine that has vulnerabilities. I can't tell you exactly why, because I'm not of those people. However, it does raise the eyebrow as to why would you want something that's so vulnerable to continue to be a part of one of our most important rights and our most important aspects of our government, which is our elections. But that being said, let me tell you exactly why the QR codes are a problem. The reason why is because the state requires us as voters to be able to verify our intent, to be able to look at our ballot, review it, and say, hey, this is who I am voting for.
Right.
And for that to be your final vote. That being said, when that ballot comes out of that machine, after you punch in, you know, your votes on the BMD, it shows text on there, and they tell you, which I think is extremely misleading, but the people in the office will say, hey, verify your vote by looking at this text. And you think that's what you're doing. Well, the problem is that the QR code is connected to an index. It has nothing to do with text at all. It has everything to do with how that index is coded. That means each candidate gets a number. So like the first candidate is number 1, and so forth and so forth. What we saw in 2022 in the DeKalb County Democrat election, that Michelle Long Spears received 0 votes in her own precinct. And this is after she went in and voted, after she got her ballot, after she reviewed her ballot, cast it into the scanner. But guess what? Her own votes did not count towards her. You know why? Because someone dropped out of that race, and it shifted the index in the QR code. So now that shifted, all of her votes went to another candidate. And it wasn't until she did a hand recount, where they reviewed the text and they audited the text, that they realized that she then became the first place winner. And she's now serving in the commission right now. So, but if she didn't have the money to do it, because just to be clear, if you question your election, only the candidate who's questioning can file a lawsuit with their own money to ask for a recount or a re-election. The Secretary of State can do a re-election, which they rarely do. Or I think the governor can call for it. However, in this case, she did file a lawsuit. She did say, hey, I want to do a recount here. And they found out that she actually won. So when people are saying, oh, I'm verifying my vote when I read the text, that's not true. No more is it true when they tell you, when you put your ballot into that scanner, that means your vote was counted. Your vote hasn't been counted yet. It's not counted until it's tabulated. Now, is a ballot image created and on the memory card that's within that scanner? I hope so. It's supposed to. In most cases, it does. But it's not until that memory card goes into a tabulator machine and then it reads the memory card that your vote is actually counted. So it's just way too many steps in our process. It makes no sense that it's so complicated. And I think it's unfair that those who want to decomplicate it, if that's a word, and make it a lot simpler, It's unfair that those are the ones that are vilified.
Wow, that's crazy. Because moving here from California, we had I call them the old time machines, but there was a printout on the side after you did your touchscreen, and it would literally print out a receipt. Well, one receipt stayed in the machine, and it was just a constant, to your point, of tabulation. And then you would get another receipt that was your personal receipt of who you voted for. There was no QR code on anything. Like I said, it was very simple. Right. I loved it. It was a very simple process, because what happened was, once the tape ran out, the election poll workers, they would come and they would take the tape and they would reinsert another tape, and that was it.
Very simple, right? I mean,
that was it.
This is why everyone's pushing for hand-marked paper ballots. And I know that, again, has been vilified in the media because no one wants to be held accountable. If you notice, it's so funny, right? I've worked in Georgia politics for so long, and I've been behind the scenes of so many campaigns. And it's so fascinating to me, the amount of candidates who just are lazy. They don't want to do retail politics. They don't want to come and ask you for your vote. They want to just spend the money, throw a couple of commercials up, and let the chips fall. That's not campaigning. No. And so we are, hand-marked paper ballots forces you to campaign because there aren't any of those back doors into the system. No. There's no coding errors, clerical errors, slog files, and all the other stuff that even the election workers barely understand. And so, it eliminates all of that. It just allows you to come in, mark your ballot, slip it in, and then we go count it. It should not be this complicated.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, because even here in Henry County, we had someone that ran for sheriff, and he ran against the incumbent, and all 68%, they told him, of the votes were accidentally cast to him. What? They were actually for the incumbent. All 68%? Seriously? Wow. Yeah. And of course, he didn't have the resources to fight back. And when he did a FOIA request, they denied it. Like, I'm just saying.
You know what?
Again,
I'm gonna give you another case. So we talk about this everywhere we go. Hall County. County, there was a city called Oakwood that's in Hall County. They had a municipal race. 600 people received the ballot that weren't supposed to, that did not live in the city limits. 300 people voted. The delta between the winner and the loser was 88 votes. To this day, we have no clue if the person who's in that seat should be in that seat. But the worst part about it is that the candidate who lost didn't have the funds to challenge it. They didn't have the means to do it. So they had to let it go. But the county officials alerted the SOS office and was like, this is not right. We should not have to certify this. Well, they told them to certify it anyway. They did not call for a re-election. No. And they held it. They didn't even tell us. The county alerted the state election board and self-reported. And she came with a notebook of emails back and forth with the Secretary of State's office. It was the most organized presentation I've seen since being on that board. She was very clear. She was like, this is not right. We wrote on our certification form that we don't think this is right to certify, but they told us to do it anyway. And unfortunately, the state election board does not have the authority to call for re-election.
Right.
So we just had to kind of let it ride. Wow. And to this day, that election still hasn't been fixed. And it's a great possibility that the person who did not have the money to challenge it was disenfranchised. And it's just not right. But that's how many other times has that happened?
Exactly. It's the multiples. Yeah. It's the multiples that are happening. Like you said, it's not just Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. There have been cases even in Southern California. I used to live in Irvine, California. And they, in California, they're always having special elections and ballot measures. Well, people were going to the ballot. Now, this one was in the event where they did a re-election for Governor Newsom. Okay. The man that actually received the exact number of votes that he had received 2 years prior. That's a multiplication. It should never happen. Like never. It should never happen because people move and people pass away. So, but people found out that when they got to the ballot booth that they had already voted. And they said, I didn't cast a vote. Well, it says here that you did. How is that happening? And it was never questioned. They didn't do any recounts. There was nothing massive about it. They just did some news stories on it and it just quietly went away.
Right. And that happens over and over and over again. We've heard cases before the election where people who felt the same, who said the same thing, that they went to go vote and they had already voted. And this leads me into the voter rolls. When your voter rolls are dirty, then you have these problems. We have a Secretary of State who I believe is just awful right now, who decided it was a smart thing to mail out almost 7 million ballot applications, absentee ballot applications during COVID. That means almost every single household received applications that has any type of registered voters in it. And when you have a process of removing voters that is slow, antiquated, out of touch, and just hard to maintain, you end up with households that have upwards to 12 and 13 registered voters. And I've seen it myself because I remember door knocking, and this was, again, years ago. I'm door knocking and I go to a house and we're using an app and it shows everybody who's registered in that house. And I'm looking at it, it says 13 people, 22 people. It's upwards to 37 people sometimes in one house because people have moved and they didn't change their address and they didn't change their registration. They haven't been clean for the voter rolls. So that means that household would have received all of those applications. And what stops you, a person who doesn't have integrity, from completing those applications and requesting a ballot? And not only that, but in 2020, they worked alongside with Stacey Abrams and they reduced the signature verification process, where they lessened it, where it's not as stringent. So now we had less of stringency when it comes to signature verification, and then a bunch of applications just floating out there. And then you wonder why. And then you throw in the drop boxes that was placed on the streets randomly. So now we're talking about dirty voter rolls, a bunch of absentee applications. You have a stringent less a signature verification process. And then you have drop boxes where people can just harvest ballots and just drop them all off. And you have no way of separating or knowing who is right and who is not when it comes to these votes.
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible, because I remember actually receiving more than one absentee ballot. And I was upset about it because I knew I was registered to vote in person. Like, that's just how I get down. I might vote early or on the day, but I'm doing it in person. And I was like, why do I keep receiving this absentee ballot? I didn't ask for this. So I'm going in and I'm checking and I'm like, okay, I did not ask for this. Why is this coming to my house? Now that makes a lot more sense. Even California in 2020, they decided to send me a postcard to my Georgia address.
Really?
To ask me if I was going to be voting in the elections. I was like, you sent it to my Georgia address. Like, first of all, that's where it's a no.
Right.
Because I live in Georgia. I'm not living in California.
Flag, right? We're like, wait, hold on, guys. Maybe we shouldn't send this to Georgia.
Weird.
Wow.
Weird. Just stuff like that. Stuff like that. And it goes on all the time. And people really don't think it does. But then here's the disheartening part that people get upset about. Well, should I vote anyway? Does it matter?
Yes.
And it matters.
Yes.
Your vote counts and it matters.
Yeah, apathy is a concern, but I feel like I'm on this quest, right? At the end of every podcast, every speech I do, everywhere I go, I am trying my best to encourage people to do their duty. You do not let the bad actors win. You cannot. If we hand over our elections, we turn into a third world country right before our eyes. Because now you're allowing the bad actors to keep winning elections and tearing this country apart and tearing our state apart. You have to overwhelm the polls. It is extremely hard to cheat when you have a huge number of people all voting in one direction. So it's all about overwhelming the polls. But as citizens, giving up our right to vote, giving up our duty is a weak position. You can't do it. We have to just keep fighting and doing our best to get these people out of here. The one currency we have as voters is our vote. That is the one way you can guarantee that you will have the necessary power to control the direction of your state. So we just have to keep doing it.
Yes. Now, with the paper ballots, are they considering, I want to say, encoding the ballots so that they cannot be duplicated, right? Because You know, obviously there were some that were, and in my opinion, duplicated, because when you're only voting for the top of the ticket, but everybody else, because if you're just doing straight down ballot, there were some races that should have been won, right, in 2020, but there weren't, because they only were the top of the ticket and they didn't vote anywhere else. And I'm like, did y'all just, carbon copy these? I'm sorry, but that's what it looks like. So will there be any type of encoding per ballot so it cannot be duplicated? It's like it's a 1-to-1 and that's it.
Yeah. So the duplication process is a kind of complicated process, because there are times in which there are ballots that are duplicated. However, so they can be scanned and read. However, when it comes to paper ballots, yes. So the way it will work is that you will have a ballot that has a code on it. So every ballot will have its own serial number. And the counties will only receive enough ballots to match the number of registered voters, which is why.
Thank you. If you've got 50,000 people, you're not going to have 75,000 voters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, obviously we've seen that, but that's not happening anymore. But the paper ballots have to work in concert with clean voter rolls, right? Okay. So, which is something that I'm taking this from my husband's stump speech, because we obviously don't have it right now. So this is the plan. But the plan is to make sure that we have, like I said, serial numbered and watermarked paper ballots, specialized paper, that it goes to the counties, and the number of people who are on their voter rolls. The voter rolls are cleaned up so that we don't have, dead people from 1900s and all that, literally 1900 birthdays, all of that stuff on there. So that's how it works. And obviously there's several other chain of custody processes that will be put in place in order to ensure that there aren't any malfeasance. But overall, there is a way to do it. And if you want to be quite frank with you, right now, the machine that we're operating on now, even though we don't trust it, it can be programmed to read the text and not the QR code. So all of this conversation around, well, we didn't have enough money and we need $66 million to remove the QR code. That's what Brad is saying, our Secretary of State.
It's a push of a button.
Right. All of that. I'm like, just update the software. Like, it's just not that complicated, but they don't want to do it. And so that leads to major problem.
Yeah. It's a selection in the background. If anybody's, or I've done database administration, and typically there's the user side and there's the administrator side. And on the administrator side, if you're saying those are the differences, it's literally the click of a button.
Right.
It's like, you're going to pick up this as opposed to this. And you just uncheck the box that says read the QR code. That's kind of it.
That's it. That's it. It's just, I mean, they are way drawing this out. And, the state legislature passed in 2024 that the QR code is supposed to be removed by July of 2026, right? However, they've kicked the can down the road so much. Brad is blaming the legislature. The legislature's blaming SOS and all this other stuff. Nobody can do anything, right? Which is the most frustrating part, and why I will continue to sound the alarm as to why we got to vote and get these people out of here. Because if you're lazy, if you don't have the wherewithal, if you don't have the mental capacity to come up with a strategy to do your job, then why are you there? So the whole thing is already frustrating, right? So we want all these people out of here. But since everybody got an excuse, their solution is to pass a bill, which is right now trying to be passed, to extend the QR code to 2028. Why are we passing laws that we can't implement? Like that, what are we doing? So
they're taking their cues from our federal Congress, because we haven't passed a clean appropriations bill since 2012. Let's just be clear.
Right.
Let's just be clear. It's been a CR ever since they said, oh, we could do that. You know what I mean? Like, we could do that. Yeah, people might get mad at us, but we could do that. Yes, you unfortunately can do that. And I'm glad that you're saying what you're saying, because we do need proper people in office to just do their job. You got one job.
Do it. Just do it. Because you run around and during the campaign season and tell us all of these promises. How many times have we been told that we're gonna get rid of income tax? Let's just be real. How many times?
Sounds good.
So we keep hearing this over and over and over and over again. And then every time we elect you to go do it, you don't do it. And the problem now falls on us. You know, what Bush say, fool me once, fool me twice. Shame on a fool can't get fooled again.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You're not going to keep bumping our heads and expecting us to be insane people, right? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I'm definitely looking forward to some new changes in the SOS. I'm definitely praying for your husband to get elected. And from what you've explained to me, it doesn't look like there would be any conflict of interest, even if you were still serving on the state board of elections, if you were to be elected Secretary of State, because you guys don't interact in that way.
Not. However, once he's elected, I probably more than likely will step down, because there is the appearance does matter to us.
The impropriety, right.
Right. Right. So right now, you know, the moment he announced, they immediately came for me, but that's because they want me off the board. But there is absolutely nothing that I do that will impact a candidate or a candidate's race. That would be all the Secretary of State. That's the administering side of it. We come in on the back end. So as of right now, he's just a candidate. But once he becomes the actual Secretary of State, meaning I have to get documents from him, we'll have to do all these things, you know, that's when it does get a little tricky. And I feel comfortable stepping down at that point, because I know we have a strong SOS who's going to do the right thing, who's going to support the board and make sure that, you know, they're in a good position. But as of right now, no, I'm not coming off the board. There's no reason for me to come off the board. And it's just how God set it up. My husband was looking at SOS prior to me being selected for the board.
Oh, okay.
You know? it was, and obviously people don't know that because it was in our home. However, when I got selected for the board, it almost felt like it was God's way of saying, I'm putting you on this path. This is where I need to go. And so I accepted it, and I pray I'm doing a good job. I know I'm doing my best. And but yeah, once he's elected, I will step down.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for being here with us. I'll let you have last words.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for educating voters. As you can see, I believe in transparency. I believe in having clear answers and being completely upfront and honest. I believe that we the people, are the ones who have the authority and not those who we elect, that they are agents of us, in that they do what we ask them to do. They work for us. So all of this, you know, just say no evil, don't speak on it, I don't believe in any of that. I will call out anybody who I voted for. So, and you should be the same way. So I hope that I encourage people and embolden you to continue to do your duty.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much again for joining us here. This has been Janelle King, and she is with the Georgia State Board of Elections. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.